Welcome to another episode of Moms with Moms. Moms offering mom support with moms on microphones. Today I have Danielle with me, and Danielle and I go back, oh gosh, more than 10 years. We went to high school together. She's a few years older than me, but we were in the high school play, and that's kind of how we know each other. And Danielle has a great Instagram story, and I've been watching her along. So she actually has done IVF once for her son now. So I wanted Danielle to come on and kind of talk a little bit about that. I'm very unfamiliar with IVF, and I know that a lot of moms out there have struggled or are considering IVF, and I thought it would be really helpful to hear firsthand from somebody in their experience. So, Danielle, tell us 3 things that you think people really should know about you that don't know about you.
Sure. So, well, first of all, thanks for having me on here.
Of course.
I'm excited. I love to talk, so I always love to share and have people listen. So, 3 things about me that people should know. Uh, well, I guess a big thing about me is that I'm gay, which is fun because when we were in high school, you didn't know me as gay. So,
I didn't. It's like a whole new
I know.
Danielle.
I was thinking about that earlier. I was like, oh my God, aside from like my closest friends, like I don't know that I've really talked to somebody from high school that like didn't that knew me as straight, and now like I'm
Hmm.
like a whole another person, I feel like. So regardless, so I identify as a lesbian, and I've been out for like well, right after I graduated, so about 15 years
Yeah.
now. And I would say being queer is a huge, huge part of my life. And it's something that's super important to me, something that I'm really proud of. And it's a big part of my work too. So it's
Hmm.
just kind of everywhere for me. Um, I think being a therapist is something also that's super important to me and
Yes.
something for that would be interesting for folks to know too. So as I said, being queer is important. I am a therapist that works primarily with queer and gender diverse folks. So, three-quarters of my caseload are LGBTQ in some way. And they sought me out as a provider because I have an expertise in working with folks in this area, and because I'm out and open about it myself. And so I think that like sort of makes people feel more comfortable.
Well, absolutely.
And I mean, I definitely do have some straight cisgender people on my caseload. I every time they ask to work with me, I'm always like, this is interesting. Why do you want me? But
Why me?
I know, but I roll with it. Usually people are like, well, you just look really nice. And I'm like, that's true. I do look like a kindergarten teacher. So I go with it.
I'm not gonna lie, I always thought that you would end up being a teacher just
Oh
because
yeah.
of like your personality and the way you carry yourself. I mean, not that the therapist is far off. I think it's very in the similar realm, but I always pictured you being literally a kindergarten teacher.
I know it's so funny. Like that's like everybody that I've like dated, like I'm like, I know, like I look like, is this being visually recorded too or just audio recorded?
We do have
Um,
some Spotify listeners, so if we can like make it so they can picture it in their brain, but we do have visual, so
yeah. Because I think whenever, people always mistake me as straight, which is fine. Like, I mean, I'm very feminine. Being feminine is super important to me. It's a part of my identity. But so anytime I say like, oh, my wife or whatever, people are like, what? I mean, I've been dealing with that for 15 years. I'm sure I will continue to because I look the way I do. And I always say that like I used to primarily work with kids, and when they would find out that I was gay, it would just like buy me a little bit of street cred because they were like, you just look like my auntie or something. And then I'm like, but I'm gay. And they were like, oh, okay, then you're cool.
you're like you're cool in our book now.
I know. I'm like, okay, like I have a little bit of like struggle that they like the kids like or whatever. But
You're not
um
a basic white girl. You're cool.
no, right. I mean, I am for sure, but with the added spice, I guess. I think also a big piece of me is that I'm infertile. That is another thing that really um is a huge part of who I am. Like I don't want to say it defines me. I don't think
Yeah.
we should let any of our struggles define us, but it certainly impacts me daily. It'll never not be something that I think about, struggle with, and paying for. I don't know, you name it. Like it's just and I could definitely like get into that more, but like the web, I guess, that it sort of like weaves is just very far reaching. So,
Yeah.
and it will always kind of impact how I view the world, unfortunately. Um, but in good ways and bad ways. I think I'm very also big on like turning your story or your mess into a message. And so that is why I do a lot of the things that I do,
Mhm.
um, to be able to spread awareness and educate folks because um, I don't know, I feel like I have a lot to say and I've been through a lot of stuff that maybe the average person hasn't. So yeah.
What was it like with your first journey? Benny is what, 2?
Dear Lord. So yeah, so he is 2. We just turned 2 in October. From starting to like track my ovulation and like try to figure out like, hey, let's do this whole baby thing, to like actually birthing him was um 2 years of try of yeah. So it was like, or actually maybe it was three years. Dear
Holy
Lord.
cow.
I know. So it took it took about 2 years to conceive him. Um,
Hmm.
and that, way back before he was even like a thought in our heads, we just had absolutely no idea what the journey to having him was going to look like. We knew going into um, starting a family that it was going to be a project. I mean, so as much as like we're talking about my IVF journey and being infertile, it's really hard to sort of tease apart also being queer because it's so intermingled in
Yeah.
many ways. So I think my journey as a queer infertile person is also going to be quite different from somebody who is straight. We tried to because I mean, another thing I was gonna say that's a big part of my identity is being a millennial. Like we're broke millennial. Like we're
Yep.
literally two broke millennials with 4 degrees between us because we both have our master's degrees. Like we were not rolling in it. And for queer people to have families, it is expensive. Like you just like know going into it that you're going to have to pay money because we know we can't just have sex to make a baby. We can certainly try, but it ain't gonna happen. So, we knew that we were going to have to, money was going to be involved and somehow. And so, that's a piece of it. But there's definitely cheaper ways that people try to conceive. So we did start actually by trying at home. So that means just like a straight person would, like tracking my ovulation. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
when I went and started the journey, like I was like, well, I don't even know if I ovulate regularly, to be honest, because who pays attention or who knows about that shit? So I was like, guess I should start peeing on sticks. And then like I saw that my cycle was really regular. I mean, I knew like my period came regularly, so I was like, well, that's a plus, because I
Yeah.
definitely had plenty of like friends who are, their period would be who knows when it would come. But I was
I'm
like,
one
nope,
of them.
yeah, I'm like 28 days like clockwork, although not anymore, so I don't know, but I was like, well, that's cool, and that's always a good sign. I knew that my mom has been pregnant a bunch of times. She has me and my brother. She had a couple miscarriages, unfortunately, and then she also had to terminate some pregnancy or some, I think one pregnancy. But I knew um like she always would make the joke, men would just look at me and I get pregnant. So I'm like, all right, well, this shouldn't be too hard, right?
Oh, you
Like,
got good genes.
yeah, I'm like, that's fine. Dawn's just like always pregnant. It's fine.
For the record, Dawn is absolutely amazing. She is like that mom who is the cool mom. Like
Yeah,
that is
Dawn is
Dawn.
she's a character. And because you know me from high school, then you really know Dawn quite well because
Yeah.
she's just like, I mean, and she's still the same. Like there is no change there. She's still just Dawn, man. So, and that's what my mom would say to me, like when I was like, okay, like we're thinking of like starting a family. My mom was like, oh, well, she's like, talk to me in a month, like, and I was like, yeah, cool. Like, I don't know, sure. So we started actually trying at home with a known donor. So that was a friend of mine from college. And this is gonna be like the wildest story you've probably ever heard,
I
and your
can't
listeners
wait.
have probably heard too. So I was like, do I say this, or like do I admit to this or do I not? But I'm gonna admit to it because you know what? This is content for you.
Well, not only that, but I feel like it's important because what if someone else is going through this, Danielle? And they're
Yeah,
like,
I
I'm the
know.
only one who's doing this. So let's hear this. I'm
Like,
ready. Is it going to be
listen,
juicy?
queer people do some weird shit to get pregnant. I'm not gonna lie. I did not have sex with anyone. Disclaimer, there was no
Did you
intercourse.
use a turkey baster?
Yes, but no, not a turkey
Yes.
baster. It's a syringe. I need like a baby medicine syringe. But the weirder part was that there are these things that exist that are known donor sperm shipping kits. So literally my good friend, he lived and we still lives in Tennessee. So he was overnighting us his jizz on on ice packs, like packaged in. So there are like companies out there that have this like chemical that you like mix with the sperm and then you pack it with ice packs, you wrap it all up and you overnight it and then you put it in you basically. And it's
Cool.
allegedly, so people, it has definitely worked for folks, but I know like it is not a tried and true type of thing. Like we were like, we don't even know if the sperm is like alive when it gets to me by the time, like it's a risk. Even though sperm can live like outside of the body for quite some time. I mean, it's pretty hardy. Um,
Yeah.
but for all we knew, I was putting dead sperm inside me, but I don't know. So it would be like
You're doing the journey. You didn't
I
know.
it would be like I would get a positive OPK and then I'd be like, hey, like do your thing and ship it. And he would. And then we would inseminate me the next day. And yeah, I mean that was a wild journey. Like walking around with your friends stuff inside you was definitely really weird. Um
And getting it packaged in the mail. Like, let's
yeah.
not neglect that. That's also
Um,
interesting. You just open it up and there's a thing of sperm with a ton of ice.
Yep. Yep. And it like it's just like I don't even know. It's even funnier too because him and I hooked up in college and like oh yeah, I know this is a whole thing. But like in college you didn't really want this near you. I was like, no. Not at all. That was not the time. And no. And now it was like, yep. And I mean, my wife is like totally cool with it. She's like, whatever. Like, she had
Oh,
met
for
him,
having sex with him.
she really liked him as a human, and we actually never had sex. We just fooled around. So, but one time too that we flew down to him in Tennessee too. I happened to be, it was like a long weekend, and I knew I'd be ovulating, and so we planned that to do a donation like in person, and it was the same
Yeah.
thing, like using a syringe. I did not have sex with him.
She
But
did not go down to have sex with him. That was not the plan, guys.
because actually it is about the same success rate as normal sex. It's basically you're just putting sperm near the cervix, which is exactly what happens when you have
Makes
intercourse.
sense.
So I'm like, this is also a science lesson.
So not
uh,
only are you going to learn about IVF, you're going to learn about the queer community and having babies. You're also going to have a science lesson on biology too. All
yeah,
right, guys?
yeah. I've become intimately knowledgeable about sperm in just a way that I just
That you
never
didn't know was going to happen.
no, never cared to know. I mean, that piece of it was a lot. And it just obviously wasn't working. I never saw a positive pregnancy test, nothing. So finally I was like, it could be user error. It could be something wrong with me. We don't know. But I was like, we tried to avoid the clinic, but it's not happening. So,
Was it cheaper to do it that way too, I'm assuming?
oh God, yeah. So
Yeah.
using even just using a known donor in general is going to be cheaper because sperm is anywhere from like 850 to over $1,000 a vial. Yeah. So,
Holy
and that's like a
crap.
try. So one try is like around $1,000 because it's also like the sperm is a certain amount of money and then the shipping is at least $100 because they literally ship it to you in a giant cryo tank for this tiny little vial that you then like thaw between your boobs. It's a whole thing. It's crazy. And we did have one vial of frozen donor sperm from a bank shipped to us. I had to literally go pick it up at a FedEx, like this box that was like up to my waist because it was so big. And I know people are looking at me like, what the hell is that? And I'm like, you don't want to know.
So it's like those, it's like what are they called? The Russian dolls, where you open it up and it's just the
Yes.
smallest thing on the inside.
It really was. And it was like all of that for this. And then you have to like ship the tank back. Like it is a whole thing.
Jeez.
Just for a try. And, at this point, I had initial blood work done and stuff like that, and nothing was wrong. All my vaccines are up to date. So nothing, thyroid panel done, like nothing glaringly obvious was wrong with me. So my doctor was like, yeah, I mean, have at it, do what you got to do. Like
Yeah.
I was like nervous to tell her, which was so weird, but like I was nervous to tell her that we were going to be trying because I didn't want to be judged for how we were going to try. So that was, I don't know, that's like just something that,
Did she know you were queer?
yeah. And it was my own anxiety because as soon as I like told her, she was like, yeah, I mean, she's like, if it's not working, let me know and we'll figure it out. Like she's like, there's no reason that you need to pay thousands of dollars. Like make your family the way you want to make your family. It's not my business kind of thing. And she's
Yeah.
great, doctor. But it was just so frustrating. Like all the planning and tracking and scheduling of sperm shipments and all this shit. Like it just was so overwhelming. And finally it was like, all right, it's time. It's time to go to the
Yeah.
clinic, which we were avoiding. But, I was like, maybe it's just the timing and maybe I just need like a couple IUIs and that'll be it. And at this point, we're just like wasting our time and sperm, whatever. So we had our first appointment with Boston IVF is the clinic that we went to, and they're actually kind of all over New England, and they have a location in Albany too. We literally had our first appointment with Boston IVF on March 11th, 2020. So remember what happened on
Oh,
March 13th, 2020? The whole world shut down.
I was gonna say, wasn't that COVID? I'm
Yeah.
like 2020. Wasn't there something big in 2020?
Yeah, man. The year that the world stopped. And I knew so that at that point that we had our first appointment, it was like, oh, there's like COVID's this thing that's happening, and there's this like big thing, like it was a big outbreak in like Italy and whatever. And
A lot of
um,
people were taking it as a joke at that point because it's
yeah,
like this is not that big of a deal.
or like
Yes.
it's over there, whatever.
Yeah.
And I was just happy to have this appointment. And she was just like, we're gonna have a full genetic testing and like all these panels done on you to make sure everything's okay. Because when I told her that my mom had had repeat miscarriages and that my brother actually, and yeah, I don't know that you know this, or maybe I did say it to you via text, but my brother's autistic. And I
Oh
don't
yeah,
know.
I know, I knew that.
I mean, he's very obviously autistic. Love the kid to death. He's textbook.
My
Um,
brother has Asperger's, so it was really like that's I think that when we went to your house for one of the cast parties, he was so cute, and I mean, I knew how to kind of talk to him, so yeah, no, I knew when I met him, I'm like, okay,
I
I
told
know now.
apparently in giving this background to my doctor and telling her that my mom had repeat miscarriages, my brother's autistic, and she went through menopause early. Apparently that set off a bunch of red flags. So that was interesting.
Who
And
would have
yeah,
thought?
I was like, what do you mean? And so apparently there was concern that I had a genetic condition that was keeping me from getting pregnant called Fragile
Yeah.
X syndrome. This is deeper than you even realized. So I had to get genetic testing done to see that if I had Fragile X syndrome. So it basically means I'm okay, but I would be likely to pass on a like wonky X chromosome. And if
Wow.
I were to have a boy, which I do, um, that he would be very likely to be autistic, which is just crazy. I mean, no one talks about this stuff. I was like, I've never heard of such a thing. So apparently just it's like those three things combined is like, yeah, this is concerning. Um,
Which is kind of crazy to me because I feel like I don't see how those are all related to
no,
to
who
go
would,
to autism. Like that
no,
just to
I
me
know.
that's just like, yeah, your brother is autistic, but all three of them meaning like, hey, your brother's gonna have this, your son's gonna have this because your brother has this and your mom had this. That to me is crazy.
I know. And I'd never heard of such. So
No.
in, I had started doing some like Googling and such too, just to be like, I knew my mom had the miscarriages, and I've always
Yeah.
had in the back of my head that um I knew she went through menopause early. Like I barely have any memory of my mom as like a menstruating human because she went through it so early. Like she really started around like 40 and was like fully done with like her cycle by like 45.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So I knew like, and that was the only thing was my mom was like, the only thing is if you are like me, you probably need to hurry up kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, right. I already got married at 28. Like, people have babies older now. Well, my doctor was just sort of like, there's really no reason why you can't get pregnant. It's probably just a timing thing. We're gonna get you pregnant. You don't need to plan this anymore or track this. Like we're gonna figure it out kind of thing. So we just had to pick another donor, and I started doing like prep for just looking into my genetics and everything, but then also we were planning to do IUIs. So the beautiful thing for us is in being in Massachusetts, we have fertility coverage here. It's mandated.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so I was like blessed to find out that we could have everything fully covered from the start, which is nuts because in my mind it was like great, like I don't know where we're gonna scrape together all this money. Sperm, however, is not covered, so that's still $1,000 every time.
And that makes no sense because don't you need sperm?
Yeah. Mm,
Okay.
it's crazy. And the other thing too that's like really frustrating is the piece of it that I struggle with that I barely even think about now because I actually am infertile. But started all of this, started in it with the mindset that like I'm a fertile person, I'm just gay, and I have just, absence of sperm is sort of what they like consider it, but that's like not considered infertile, which is like good. I didn't like that label, but however, if you are deemed infertile, then you get shit paid for. So it's like this weird like catch 22 where you don't
I
want to
feel
be
like
considered
that's
infertile.
punishing you for being queer.
Kind of, yeah. Tell everybody. I literally like tell this shit at like parties and fires, and people are like, this is insane. I'm like, you're welcome to my life.
Because you're queer, you don't have a male who has an issue with his sperm. So
Yes.
it's absence of sperm, not issue with sperm. So you don't get shit covered for the sperm part, which
Yeah.
is ridiculous.
So typically, I did get my IUIs covered right off the bat, which is really interesting because in any, I think I just randomly really had really good health insurance too, because usually that still isn't covered. Like you have to
Um,
qualify as infertile for this stuff to be covered. I think I just had really bomb like Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance. I don't know, which is crazy because I worked for the worst mental health agency ever, but man, I stayed with them literally for their health insurance because their benefits were so good.
yeah,
Um, and mind you, like as much as the genetic testing was covered and like monitoring and things like that, and the procedures, like again, it's still $1,000 a try for the sperm, plus, you know, copays, my deductible needing to be met, which was $1,500 at the time, which sounds so cheap to me now.
I hate adulting.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's a trap. Don't do it. Um, it was on the cheaper side of things, but still not cheap, mind you.
Mm,
But I just went into it being so relieved that somebody else was going to get me pregnant and it wasn't me trying to get me pregnant because I really felt like I was very quickly turning into like a science experiment. It's not like it's fun, straight people get to have sex. That's not the case for me.
no,
And no, like that being said, I know there's plenty of straight couples that have a hard time getting pregnant. And I also know that like sex to make a baby is definitely not the same as just having fun. I get that. However, I don't have that chance even to start with, you know what I mean?
no.
It's already going to be medicalized, no matter what we do. So But I was like, whatever. The world shut down because of COVID. When we left our first consult, I went to go shake my doctor's hand and she was like, oh, we're not shaking hands. And I was like, something's going on. Like I literally, we walked out there and I said to my wife, I was like, they know something we don't. And like, sure enough, 2 days later, the world shut down and like no one's touching and like no one's, going near each other. And it was the craziest thing. And I was just absolutely devastated because I was so hopeful. And then 2 days later, it was like, we're calling off all treatment. They put everything on pause because everything shut down. So infertility is considered, unless I was in the middle of a treatment cycle, fertility is considered, what's the word? What's the word? Not like it wasn't like a necessary,
Unessential.
yeah, like it wasn't like an essential like form of medicine. So it was like considered like kind of like akin to like plastic surgery or something. Like it wasn't.
How old were you at this point?
So I was 29.
Okay.
I was turning 30 that year. So
Okay.
it was like just a few months shy of my 30th birthday. And I'm 33 now, 33 and a half. So it's been a long time. um, So it wasn't until they didn't resume treatment again until like June. So I got back in there a few months later. I called and I was like, so things are starting to open up again. Are you guys offering treatment again? And they were like, yeah. So that was when things really got going. Um, through genetic testing, I found out that nothing was wrong with me. So that was really cool because there was this kind of
Nice.
like big scary thing on there. Um, However, if I had the Fragile X syndrome, I would have gotten expedited straight to IVF and had it covered. So there was a part of me that almost wanted it because I would have had everything covered, which is another like this is like, I don't know, like if you have the right things you get shit paid for. So you almost want to have problems because not having a known problem, like they're like, oh, sorry. I would have immediately had genetic testing of my embryos covered, so many things that I don't have coverage for, even now, to this day, because there's nothing really officially wrong with me. So so we did IUIs. I did two natural IUI. So my cycle was still very regular. My hormones were great. Everything looked good. But we did find out in my initial testing that I have so at the time it was low AMH and borderline diminished ovarian reserve. So as I expected, I have a much lower egg count than somebody my
Okay.
age. And AMH is like a hormone that is indicative of what your egg count is. So it's not good to have low AMH and a low egg count, but it shouldn't mean that I can't get pregnant. It just means, like I had thought, the timeline is a lot shorter.
Yeah.
Uh, it doesn't say anything about the quality of your eggs or anything like that. So, or like lead to miscarriage or anything like that. It's just, I don't have a lot of eggs. I don't have a lot of chances. But I do ovulate regularly. So I am dropping an egg every cycle, which is all the things you need to make a baby. So my doctor was sort of like, there's no reason why IUI shouldn't work. So we did IUIs. We use my natural cycle. So I just would go in for monitoring for blood work and ultrasound. And they would just monitor the rise of my hormones, monitor with a transvaginal ultrasound to watch the follicle growing and see like which ovary it's coming from, whatever. Again, all things I didn't know was a thing. um,
Good.
I did have two other tests too done. I had a HSG, which is where they check to make sure that my fallopian tubes weren't blocked, which they weren't. And then I had a saline sonohystogram, which is where they shoot water up the saline up there and check for polyps or anything that could be obstructing in any way. Sometimes people find out they have a septum in their uterus or something crazy like that. Nope, nothing. Everything looks great, beautiful. Still don't really know why you're not getting pregnant. So the natural IUIs, nothing happened. So then I ended up doing three more IUIs. So I did five. So mind you, that's like $5,000 right
Oh,
there.
crap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna
Um,
say that's gotta be a lot of money.
And we had used one sperm donor for two, and then he was sold out of sperm. So we had to switch to a different donor for three and four. And then we needed a different one for number five. I also was on Clomid for three of the IUIs, which made me drop two eggs at a time, and I still wasn't getting pregnant. And so finally, I was supposed to do six IUIs in order to get qualified for IVF. Um, but my doctor was like, nope, like this is ridiculous. You need to just do IVF. Like we're just flushing sperm down the toilet. And I'm like, thank you. Like somebody said it. So she was able to, she just applied for IVF and got it approved. They didn't even question it. So that was amazing because she was like ready to fight them. But they
Okay.
didn't even care. Um, so yeah, I stuck with the same donor going into IVF because my final IUI with the donor whose name is Asher, it's his nickname, not his real name. He had really great numbers. They were like, this is good shit. I was like, good. It was expensive. Yeah, so we bought two more of his vials of him going into IVF. And my doctor kind of like warned me going into IVF. Like she was like, um, you know, I'm gonna have to put you on aggressive medication because you don't make a lot of eggs and like it's not gonna be great. Like there's potentially gonna be side effects, and I essentially was like, don't compare yourself to the average IVF patient because you're going to get significantly less eggs.
Makes
Um,
sense.
which definitely was the case. So it was around December 2020 that I had my first round of IVF. And it sucked. Like I had to do everything alone because of COVID. Um, so I had to go into surgery alone, wake up alone. Like it sucked. I literally woke up from my egg retrieval because you get knocked out. Um, and it's honestly a little like, I don't know, this is like trigger warning ish for folks who this is could be upsetting for. It is very uh I don't know, you feel like very like Handmaid's Tale esque or something like where you the surgery center that you go for like egg retrieval, at least for my clinic, like it's literally just like women lined up in gowns and caps to like go get their eggs sucked out of them, and like it's just a little horrifying.
So it's not
Like
really like comforting, like a
no,
comforting setting, which
no.
you think it would
And we
be
were
because
alone.
of the
All of us
mom.
were alone that day. You know, it's like all I can think of is how none of us had a comfort person there, a
No.
partner to like hold our hand, tell us it was going to be okay or whatever. So, I mean, it'd been over a decade. So I was scared shitless, but I had to do it alone because of COVID. um, and when I came out of surgery, I apparently said, tell my wife I'm alive. Slightly dramatic.
Just a little bit.
But I was fine. I handle anesthesia well. I just wanted to go home. And they did get seven eggs from me, which is really good for somebody with my diagnosis, but like the average person usually probably gets around like 12 plus. Um, I have a friend who literally got like 30 something eggs, just for perspective. Yeah. So
Wow.
like shit just continues to get worse as you get older, which, was exactly what I was told was like, you're running out of time, essentially. So everyone that kept telling me, but you're so young, it's fine. I'm like, yes, chronologically, I am young, but my biological clock,
Biologically, you're not.
yeah, we all talk about like my biological clock thinks I'm 40. So I'm not, you know. So with my first round of IVF, I got the seven eggs, six of which were mature, and able to be fertilized, which is like an amazing fertilization rate. So that goes to show that my egg quality is pretty good. Because a lot of times it's like, yeah, you get 30 eggs, but maybe only 20
Yeah.
of them will fertilize. Um,
Okay.
and the stats kind of drop off as you go. So as the time went on, they told me by the end of it, I got four embryos from the seven eggs, which also is like unheard of. My doctor was like thinking maybe like two. So, um, my first transfer, I did get pregnant, which was wild. I had never seen a positive pregnancy test in 2 years. And I was like, holy shit. And I was so excited. But I ended up having a chemical, which I didn't even know what that was until it happened to me. So, it was just so much joy and excitement. And then, quickly I went in for my beta and they want it to be 100 or above. And mine was 25. So they were like, well, you're pregnant, but it doesn't look good. And they're like, we've seen miracles. We want it to double because you go in every 2 days. But they were like, guard your heart essentially. And sure enough, when I went in 2 days later, it was down to 13 or something. So, and I watched because I'm a crazy tester. So I watched the lines get fade on my
Plus,
pregnancy
yeah.
test. So I knew. And then I got the call that like, no, like this is a chemical pregnancy. Like, I'm sorry. And I was a wreck. And I was just like, what if this happens with every single one? Like, you know,
Well, and
um,
at this point, it's been 2 years, so it's like
yeah.
you keep being let down.
I'm like, nothing works really, like is where
Yeah.
what I thought. And then went right back in for a second transfer. 2 months later, well, actually, I guess, because my first one was in January 2021, and then Benny was March 5th, 2021. Like, that's another thing, like being an IVF person and an infertility person, like the dates are like burned into
Engraved.
your brain. And so yeah, with my son, so he was my second transfer, and I literally peed on a stick and I got in the shower. I didn't even like, I was like, whatever. Like, I'm just getting in the shower, like, whatever. And I knew it was going to be positive. I literally was like, I'm sure that this is positive, but like, we'll see what happens. Like, I just don't trust it at this point.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I got out of the shower and it was positive. And I was like, we'll see. Like, I still kind of was like, I don't know. Like, I've now I don't trust my body. I don't trust this
Yeah.
stick. Like, I don't know. Um, but he kept getting darker and took a digital eventually and it said pregnant and I was like, holy shit, like there is no way.
It's happening.
Yeah. So in the beginning, you go in for a really early ultrasound at 7 weeks, 3 days. I went in and again, the little shit gave me a scare because he was measuring a week behind and his heart rate was low. And so they literally were like, it could be fine or it could be impending demise, fetal demise is what they said. And I was like, awesome. So I was a fucking wreck again for a week. They had to wait a week to go back. And then we went back in a week later. And as soon as she like put the ultrasound in, Annie goes, whoa, was that the baby? Because he was huge suddenly on the screen and everything was fine. So I don't
Oh,
know if it
good.
was just a mismeasure or what happened. And yeah, then I was just like pregnant. It was crazy and nuts
It
and
finally fucking
amazing.
happened.
Yeah, I was just like, so you better believe I took bump pics every week. Every milestone I was celebrating, but not until probably around like 15-ish weeks, like my anxiety was still through the roof because I was like, okay,
Yeah.
now I'm pregnant, but now I need to stay pregnant. Like, it's just my anxiety quickly shifted to, well, what if I lose this baby? And then I'm just not even gonna make it. Um, but he was fine. He was fine the whole way. I had a very unremarkable pregnancy. Thank God. I literally didn't even have morning sickness. So I literally feel like I know. Go ahead, hate me. I know.
I didn't until the end, but the
I
end was horrible.
So the ending was horrible for me too. I feel like the universe did bless me because I literally had like 2 days where I was nauseous and then I was totally fine. But
Deserve that.
my third trimester though, I got diagnosed with gestational diabetes. Um, so that was a bitch. Suddenly I was dieting during my pregnancy. That was terrible. All I want to do is like eat ice cream and I can't. It was awful. I was a wreck. But honestly, worse than the gestational diabetes was I had PUPS. I don't know if you know what that is.
I've heard about it, yes.
Yeah, it's terrible. Pure, hold on, puritic or puritic urticaria. oh my God, puritic, urticarial papules, and plaques of pregnancy.
Sounds like
Puritic. I don't know. It's a tough word. Um, it is. So essentially it's like it happens more with boys, males, and it's essentially like your body is like allergic to the baby. And so I just had a full body rash and high, and not rash is actually putting it lightly. It was welt size hives all over my body. It was hideous. So hideous. And not only hideous, but like itchy. The itching was just so bad. Like it's like you're already uncomfortable, nothing fits, you're huge, you like can't reach your
you
feet.
can't eat what you want now.
Yeah, I couldn't eat what I wanted, and
Fudge.
I had a lot of swelling. My ankles and feet were just so huge, my calves, and then I itched everywhere, and it was just awful. Like, and then you itch and itch and itch, and then you have like sores, and then you like pick that. It's I still have scars on my body from this goddamn rash. But I was like, whatever. I've wanted this. I've wanted this for so long. Um, and then, then the kicker was, which I feel like he was born 5 weeks premature. So, they had actually been planning to induce me because literally because they were like, you're so miserable. I was like, it's fine. I'm fine. And I'm like, guys, you don't
I was
understand. I
born for
wanted
this.
this. Yeah. And they're like, no, like between the full body rash and the diabetes, like we can just evict the baby. It is fine. So they were actually planning to induce me around 39 weeks, but it didn't matter because my water broke at 34 weeks, 6 days.
You must have
So,
been shitting your pants at that point because
oh,
you're
I
like,
was.
what the hell?
I was shitting my pants. I said, I've been researching this shit for years. I wanted to be a mom so badly, And so every influencer you can think of, I followed and did everything they said.
We're gonna buy this. I'm gonna buy this. We're
Exactly.
gonna
And I shit you not, I literally folded like the last onesie and put it in the dresser, and I stood up and my water broke. And I was like, it's like, and it was like a scene from a movie. I was like, Annie, I think my water's broke. And she was like, no, you probably just peed yourself. Like that's literally what she said to me. And I make fun of her to this day. And I'm like, unless I'm still peeing myself, I don't think it was pee. And my labor was pretty decently traumatic, but I was able to have him vaginally, which is amazing and often not what happens when you're induced too.
yeah.
I was begging them for a C-section because I am a baby and I was scared shitless, and I was like, honestly, if you could just knock me out, I'd be cool with that
I'll
too.
be fine. Just take him out of me. I don't even care how
Yeah,
he comes out. Just
I'm
take him
done.
out.
I'm just done. And I'm not that person who's like, birth is so beautiful. I'm like, nope, I don't want to, like, just get him out. I don't want to throw up. I don't want to, nothing. Like, I don't do well with that stuff. So, and I was scared. I was really scared about labor and delivery. Like, I just,
No.
I don't know. No, you don't know until you do it, like, what the hell it's like. So, but I still, at the back of everything and the core of everything was like, this is what all that I've ever wanted. So I don't even care. I don't care. I can do it. I can do anything. And we kind of said, like, after we had Benny, that, this is going to be the year of just him. Like, I was like, I don't want to talk about fertility treatments. I don't want to talk about, we've always said we wanted 2 kids, but
Yeah.
I was like, I don't even want to go there. Like, I just want to enjoy being a mom, enjoy my kid, and then come like 2023, we'll start talking about it. What if we just have one kid? Like, I feel like society tells you that babies need siblings and or kids need siblings and only kids are weird and like, just so many narratives around that. And my wife is one of 5. So, I mean, I have a brother, but he's 10 years younger than me. So like birth order wise, we really were kind of raised like only children. So I'm not like in the camp of like everyone needs siblings. So and we were just like he's just so perfect. Like we just really hit the lottery with this kid. Like he's just so smart and personality for days and sleeps through the night and is a great eater and like listens, and I don't even know. Like he's perfect. He's just perfect. And so we were
The
like,
universe blessed you.
yeah, yeah. I'm like, I think what if we were rocking the boat is sort of what I was worried. Like what if, everyone always says like the if you had your second child first, they'd be an only child, or like, they're breaking the mold or they're the test or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know that I want to be tested or challenged. Like,
You've already been tested and challenged enough. Come on now.
well,
Do you
yeah,
have to go through
yeah,
more shit?
exactly. And I also was kind of like, do I want to do this all again? Like, it's not like, let's have another baby, let's go do it. It's like, let's have another baby, let's call Boston IVF and schedule a consult and pay hundreds of dollars. Like, it's not,
Well, not only that, but like you're kind of like reliving the trauma all over again.
yeah. And I went through a lot of that. I mean, I,
Yeah.
I'm in therapy. I've been in therapy since I started all of my fertility journey stuff, actually. So definitely a huge proponent of therapy. Also a therapist, so like I'm biased, but like,
You kind of have to, yeah.
but I really did go back into therapy because of the fertility stuff, because it was just the emotional roller coaster of it was just something that I really had no idea was going to be so intense. No one, I don't think anyone could possibly equip you with this. There's just no
No.
way. Like, and nobody goes into trying to start a family thinking they're going to have these problems either. So really, it's also like it blindsides you really. Um, and my wife is so supportive. Like, I mean, I think both of us would have a ton of kids if we could afford it and if it was possible. But she's just kind of like, it's you, it's your body. Like, I can't tell you what you are comfortable with and not comfortable with. Like, if we just have Benny, like, I'm happy. Like, I want another kid, but it's not that simple for us. And
Yeah.
she doesn't want to carry, um, which is totally fine because honestly, like, I don't want her to carry. Like, I would not only would it like gender wise not make sense for her because she's incredibly masculine and she identifies as non-binary, so it would just be like a mind f, I think, for her and for me. I also would literally be incredibly like jealous. Like, I'm still to this day jealous of anyone who's pregnant, and if my wife was pregnant, I literally would spend her entire pregnancy being like, well, I wish it was me. Like, I feel compelled to be the one who carries the babies. I always have. I loved being pregnant, even though it was like insane at the end there. I loved it. And I loved every second of it. I'd do it over again. I'd do it. I'd be a surrogate. I don't care. I love being pregnant. I'm crazy. Call me crazy. She is older than me too. So realistically, we don't entirely know how her eggs would be even too. And so many people are like, well, what if you used her eggs? But so that would be considered reciprocal IVF.
Yeah.
But that is completely out of pocket. So because that is she would almost be considered an egg donor, even though she's my wife. And that's not covered by insurance. So a lot of stuff could be like testing and some of the meds and stuff like that, but for the most part, it would be out of pocket. And we really cannot afford that. There's just no way. You gonna do another round. And I really had said for the longest time, I'm like, I'm not doing this again. I'm not doing it. That. No, like, I cannot afford it. I don't have the bandwidth.
You guys come back next week for the rest of this episode. Danielle shared a lot of her IVF journey as a queer mom, so there's so much to take in this. If you guys liked this episode and want to see more, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. If you guys have any comments or questions for Danielle, hit the comments below and I will direct them straight to Danielle so that way she can kind of help you guys in your journey and your experience. If you guys want to see daily reels or get some interesting facts, follow my Instagram, also my Facebook. I am no longer banned from TikTok. only because I made a new TikTok. So here's my TikTok page for all of the fun videos that I wanted to post and now can vote. So please turn back in next week for the rest of her journey.
Bye, besties.